Hello, everyone. Welcome. I see some people already saying hello in the Zoom chat, so a warm welcome to all. We'll just begin here by saying hello and welcome to each other. So you can type directly in the Zoom chat just where you're coming from, and if there's anything that wants to be shared. Often we share about the weather, but if there's anything else, that's fine too. Today, I just will say my name is Antoinette. I'm the host, and I woke up this morning and it was kind of that chilly fall, crisp morning. And I went outside and the sun started to come out. And I just felt this is, fall in New York, first of all, but also, each day we get up and we choose what to do with our time and what we do with ourselves and how we kind of get the morning creakiness out. So a warm welcome to all of you. I hope you were able to just find some gratitude and joy for this day today. And we welcome you and welcome anything that you're bringing to this space. So we've got Wisconsin, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Maryland, Bethesda, Maryland, lots of Maryland today. We've got Mexico in the house, San Rafael, California, Bainbridge Island, colorful Vermont, freezing in Boise, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Palm Beach Gardens, Philly. Wonderful. I love that one of the names has South Florida in it and then a more direct where we're from. So wonderful to see all of you coming in, and sort of I know that this moment is kind of a trickle in moment. So I'll just let you land here. And a reminder that we are coming together in this Women Together Connect space for kind of what we call max mix. So an ability to connect with each other in the maximum mix that we can. So across all of our different places and spaces, and try to meet each other and connect with one another and really give us a chance to do a tiny practice or two or three and just land in ourselves and where we're coming from today. And then also connect with each other. And that is really what today is all about. We have just under an hour to do that, or just about an hour to do that. And I just give a little grounding practice before we go into our breakout rooms. And then we also have a couple of other options for joining us now. So we have Women Together Circles where you can connect in with a group. We just started last week. Our second meeting is tomorrow. So many of you are already in there and it's a joy to be together. And the way that we're staying connected there is by conversations.womentogether.com. And that is really a place, even when you can't be in one of these sessions Tuesday or Wednesday, you can stay connected with us online and say hello and connect with each other. I got some good weekend updates in there. You can direct message each other. Thanks, Ella, for putting that in the chat. So to help us land here, now that we're kind of trickled into the room and into our circle, I'd like to offer a moment of stillness. So I brought our little singing bowl, and what we'll do is just land here in our bodies to the sound of the bell, and then also just tuning into the breath and tuning into the sound of the breath, the feeling of the breath, the sensation of the breath moving in and out of the body. And to do that, we can get both feet flat on the ground if that's available to you. You can lower your gaze or close your eyes. And just feel a sense of uplift in the spine. Just feel yourself landing. If you're sitting, feeling the seat underneath your body and how that is connected to the chair, connected to the floor. And then the floor is connected to the ground, to the earth. Just feeling that somehow we are connected to earth. And as the breath moves in and out, perhaps just letting your body be breathed, not trying to change it, not trying to alter the breath or control it. Just letting the breath do what it wants to do. I'll ring the sound of the bell to bring us into a moment of stillness together, and I'll bring the sound of the bell to bring us back. So as you bring yourself back to the screen and into connection with everyone here, you can put your view onto gallery if you're in Zoom, and just take a look at maybe 4 boxes. So 4 different boxes that you see. We've been developing this practice of letting ourselves be seen and seeing others. And it's not just seeing with the eyes, it's really holding our whole community with our bodies. I've been thinking a lot about our senses. So if we were in circle, we would sort of subconsciously be, our senses would be activated, our smell, our touch, our skin, just being in connection with each other. So if you just activate these different parts of the body, just feeling, breathing in these 4 boxes, but knowing that we're breathing in our community, and then just expanding that to across the entire body to be holding each other here. And one of our teachers, Thomas Hubel, talks about seeing, letting ourselves be seen, but he calls it, I feel you feeling me. So I'm feeling you feeling me. And that is what we're doing. We're feeling each other and allowing ourselves to be felt, just with our presence here. And in this moment, perhaps there's something that just strikes you as what's brought you here today? What's brought you here into this conversation, into this connection? What brings you here? And you can, when you've given your welcome to your 4 squares, you can type directly in the chat about what's brought me here today. And today we're talking about following intuition. So it could be that your intuition told you to show up today. It could be that you have something specific to do with the topic or not. Thanks, Frances, for starting us off. She's talking about the different distractions that we experience in our lives and in our families and around the world. And then asking us, do you wonder what you are missing in the big picture? So, and thank you, Frances. She said, we spend a lot of time talking about race, more divisive instead of culture, and people try to retrain our intuition. Imagine that. Really fascinating, Frances, because I think technology has probably shifted a lot of our experience of our own intuition. So we'll talk a bit more about that. Doreen, I showed up because it feels good to be here. Kala, the topic of intuition always fascinates me, and I want to trust in mine even more. It's a welcoming space. Cloudy days, both real and virtual. Sorry to hear that, Susie, but we're holding you in this moment. Hopefully this is the turning point of the day to let the sun start poking through. Joan, interested in the topic. Laura, I've spent a lot of time and energy ignoring my intuition, listening to others, to society instead, ready to tune in to myself. Christina, feeling the need to be connected to others without distractions. Jerry, facing surgery Thursday, and I want to find calmness. Well, Jerry, we are holding you as you go into this moment. And yeah, we're here with you. So, wishing you a lot of luck and support in this. So, Eileen, love this time of hanging out with incredible women. Leslie, very cloudy here, inside and out, need a distraction. Tuning into the powerful sense of intuition, such a time of imbalance tends to cut me short of my intuition. Looking forward to opening up. I showed up as I needed a boost, confronting some personal challenges. Suzanne, when we hear that voice of intuition, what is it? Elizabeth, my intuition has saved me more than once. Pamela, I wrote a prompt recently that wound up having me write about my intuition. Wonderful. I'm here in stillness, practice, and routine. I'm waiting for conversations to get deeper. Yeah. Wonderful. Sometimes I'm not present for a reason, but I'm glad I showed up afterwards. That's how I feel when I exercise. Any practice, I feel like if I show up and I just keep showing up, I feel better after. And I sometimes just feel that way in the morning, especially in the fall. I mean, the winter it's worse, but in the fall I'm like, oh, what is this cloudy, cold thing happening? So for those of you who are living in perpetual sunshine, we are all coming to your house. But in the meantime, um, we have to kind of figure out how to lift a little bit of that. And also just accept, accept that that's what's here today. So wonderful. So let's dive in a little bit. I've prepared a couple of thoughts on this, and also just thinking about what is intuition. Because what I'll share is that, in working with Eileen for the last 12 years or so, I've learned she is an incredibly intuitive human being, and her way of, I mean, her way of designing clothes is really guided by this intuition. And for her, she'll describe it that way, but also she talks about she sees pictures, so she'll see a vision of what she wants something to look like or feel like, and then she creates it, and brings in people who can support her in creating that. But the thing about what that I find so interesting about it is a lot of people look for a business plan, especially, like, I'm mostly speaking about the business world. I think this is true in life as well, that, we look for a plan where we look for, like, here's, if I go to this school and I get this degree and then I'll go do this thing and then I'll have my career for this and I'll make this much and I'll do, and it doesn't always work that way, first of all. Most often it doesn't. And there's also, you know, there's so many sayings about plans, but I'll save some of those. The idea is basically that we can plan and plan and plan and plan, and sometimes that helps. I'm a big planner. I like to do that. And at the same time, how do we activate, when that plan isn't necessarily, going through, or when, there's something maybe even better than the plan? How do we stay attuned to that? How do we stay aware enough and practice having that awareness so that in that moment we can either tune into what's going on inside and act, or we can tune into the external realities. And so there's an aspect of intuition that is both of those things. So it's both the external and the internal. And it's really based on how our brain works. And I won't go totally deeply into this because I'm not a neuroscientist, or, but I've worked with a number of teachers who talk about these aspects of our brain and our nervous system. So there are parts of our nervous system that are active and parts that are passive. So when we're doing, let's say, a yoga practice or moving our body or deciding to do something, that's activating our active nervous system. And when we go, for those of you who have done yoga, shavasana, when you're sort of just lying on the floor and letting your body go into what's called corpse pose, but just letting your body to completely rest, that's activating the passive nervous system. And what happens at that time is that everything that you learned, everything that you sort of started to fire up in your brain or in your body, starts to actually be integrated at that time. It's why sleep is so important. It's why meditation can do so much for us, because we're actually allowing our body to come to, we're allowing those systems to come online and become aligned with each other. So, I mean, and this is why I would say, for someone like Eileen, her business model and her business plan is not to create a 5-year strategy and then go after it. It's to be with what's coming up, with what's emerging, and find continued alignment in it. And of course, in the industry of creating clothing, you have to plan, you have to work with shipping and manufacturing and distribution and all of these things. But at the same time, these business decisions are rooted in feeling and sensing what's emerging, and what the product then is actually what her vision has been is around making timeless design. So in that, what in our lives is mirroring that process? What in our lives is, the arc of our journey or our experience of being here on the planet? And what day to day do we sense into as, oh, now I'm going to take this next step. Now I'm going to experience this thing. And almost not an active mental decision, but based on this is my gut knows. We often talk about that. And the reality, as many of you know, is that our gut, our stomach, actually has cells in it that is called the second brain. So it's a network of neurons, or however you want to talk about that. But it's actually an enteric nervous system. So I talked about the active nervous system, passive nervous system, and the enteric nervous system. And this is the one that I cognitively know the least about, but physically I feel it often. And what I've learned is that it contains about 100 million neurons, which is actually more than the spinal cord and the peripheral nervous system, so in the back of the brain here. But it's actually, and like right, down in the spine, but it's actually less than the brain itself, which is why it's called the second brain. And that part of our bodies is picking up information. This is where the external and internal piece comes from. Because as soon as we walk into the room, we're picking up information. So even when we did that little moment of stillness, I mentioned, this sensing mechanism. And it's, immediately we start to smell something, we taste something, we hear things, we start to feel, and those of us who don't have access to all of those senses, some of those other ones are heightened for that. But, all of these things are parts of information and data that our bodies are picking up. Some of that is subconscious. It's not necessarily we're thinking about it all the time, but some of that is incredibly conscious. And when we need to make a quick decision, we often find that our intuition is sort of activated. We can feel it in the moment, a quick decision, we're like, and that's because of all of that information that we've already picked up and that we've continued to pick up. So in a relationship or in a connection, as much as we want to really, what we've talked about, generous listening, generative listening, and co-creation, as much as we want to be in this place of potential, and really sensing into what's emerging and being fully present, everything in that interaction is also guided by what brought me to that moment. So I often talk about we don't know what the other person in front of us had for breakfast, let alone our life experience. Each of us throughout our lives is picking up so much information, and that guides every next step that we're taking. And sometimes, we kind of override that. We're like, no, it's going to be different this time. And sometimes we tune in, and it could be that it's going to be different this time. There's always, always, always room for possibility and change. And our intuition is picking up. Terry talked about an alertness to the inner and outer. So just picking up that all of this information that we're picking up is, rooted in both the external and internal experience. So it's our senses, but it's also this second brain, the gut, this place. I like to think of it as just below my belly button. And it's a moment where I can it's, when I think about making a decision, I have a mental way of making a decision, I have the heart way of making a decision, and then I have the gut, which is like, it's typically not very wordy. It's just got a yes or a no. It's clear. And if I really tune into that place, I can feel it. I can feel the deeper knowing. Whether or not we listen to it is a whole other question, but giving ourselves the practice and the space to really listen to that. For me, I describe all of these aspects of, body and brain and, the biology of it. But the reality for me personally is that I can feel it. And so what I invite us to do is we're going to practice it and just practice feeling that part of us. And I love what Suzanne just said. She said, if it's alive, it constantly changes. So this is constantly getting new information. It's constantly able to guide us. And, it's not that it gave me this yes or no decision 5 years ago, and now that's what I need to do. It's that we stay attuned to that. We stay aware of that in any given situation, of that space in the body. And this is, the body knows more than we give it credit for. But what I'd like to do now is just do a little practice of tuning into the intuition, and that voice, and just seeing what's there for you today. It may be that you've got this like, I'm good space. And it could be that there's really something there for you today. So what I'd like to do is just land us here back in the body. You've taken in some information, and just take a breath and get your feet on the floor. And if you'd like, one thing that helps me with this is the 3-part breath. So putting one hand on the heart and one hand on the belly. Again, just at first, just allowing yourself to feel the breath moving in and out, just knowing that this is a good gateway, a good entry point is the breath that keeps, whether we mean to or not, it's the part of the autonomic nervous system. It just keeps going. And often, as soon as we start to tune into that breath, it begins to deepen. To activate the 3-part breath, we'll exhale out completely together. And we'll inhale and fill the belly, just letting it expand all the way out. Fill the chest, and fill the collarbones all the way up, and just hold. And then release out the collarbones, the chest, and the belly. And we'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling, fill the belly, the chest, and the collarbones. And exhale, release the chest, collarbones, the belly, all the way out. And one last time on your own. And as you tune in here, no distractions, just being in the base of the belly, just below the belly button, just feeling deeply in the body. And perhaps just saying hello to that voice there. And perhaps if you have a question for this voice, perhaps a challenge you're facing, a decision you need to make, just tuning in with that inner ear. Perhaps if you have a few things, what do I need to prioritize? What do I need to, just tuning in and noticing this conversation almost between the mind and the gut. When you're ready, you can release your hands from your body and just allow the breath to move up and down the spine. Just knowing that there's a tiny practice. You can always tune in, even just putting your hand on your belly in a conversation where you're like, what's going on for me here? What's actually happening? And just tuning into that space. And when you're ready, you can pick up a paper and a pen that hopefully you have nearby. We love to journal in Women Together Connect. So if you bring paper and pen, just now that you've had a glimpse of access to this intuitive space, what is the voice that's blocking your intuitive knowing? Just to identify that and put it on paper. Perhaps the work of the hand, putting it down on paper, will really alert you to something that's blocking you. And just to share, some of the voices that typically block this, in the Presencing Institute, we talk about the voice of judgment, the voice of cynicism, and the voice of fear. But just for a moment, identifying which one is typically, or what voice, maybe it's not one of those, but just what voice typically blocks your access. It might be Facebook or Instagram that's blocking your access. Just tuning into what typically blocks that for you. And just to repeat that the three I mentioned earlier are the voice of judgment, the voice of cynicism, and the voice of fear. Those are typically blocking our access to being in tune on a regular basis. There's something, for me, it's the voice of judgment. I constantly am judging myself, what I did, what I'm about to do. So that's me. But there are many others. Sometimes the voice of judgment shows up as comparison. And that's, I think, the one where, if we're spending time online and we're sort of isolated, we start to compare ourselves and then hold ourselves back. And then just to remind yourselves that you can do this, when are the moments that you've had a strong intuitive knowing? And just kind of recalling, I know I can do this because I've done it before. And I will say, when I was deciding where to live, that was a big moment that I had to tune into my intuition, what was going to be the right place for me now. So when are the moments when you have really had the strong intuitive knowing and followed it? And now the fun part is that we will connect with each other. We'll turn and talk to one another. So if we were in a big circle right now, we'd just turn to a little small group and chat with one another. Zoom gives us this fun way of doing it. But we'll turn and talk to each other and just share your name, where you're coming from, and let's dive right in. Carly invited us into a deeper conversation today. So let's just dive in. When are the moments that you've had a strong intuitive knowing? And what are the voices that actually block your intuitive knowing? And we'll give each other room to speak and room to share. So make sure that each person gets a turn. And we'll be back here in just over 20 minutes. We'll give you 22 minutes for today's breakout. Enjoy your time together. We'll see you back in 22 minutes.